Come on and have a seat. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you very much for coming today. I know I'm the Mayor, Andy Letham. So we'll get going here. What we want to talk a little bit about and what we're trying to do with this presentation is just a bit of an outline. It's the same presentation that I'm giving everywhere in the city. I'm doing 10 of these town hall meetings, and it's not so much about local issues here in Kinmount. It's more about where we are with the city, where we were a year ago, where we're at today, obviously where we're heading in the future. Building a sustainable, affordable community for us, for our children and our grandchildren. But it really does involve us being willing to look beyond our own individual interests and consider the greater good and where we need to go as a city. Looking beyond our driveway, I like to say it must be a citywide strategy. We do have some tough decisions ahead of us that we have to make as a council and as a community, but I'm confident that we're making choices that will allow us to build a better community with better services that we all want, and more importantly, that we can afford moving forward. So that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish here in the next little while. So this is a chart that I just wanted to put. There was a mail out that came out in the in your final tax bills, and it was our effort at the city to try and communicate a little better with our residents. So rather than putting something in the paper or putting something in a magazine, an ad, we wanted to get this out to everybody's in their tax bill, so that everybody who has a residence or obviously pays taxes here, or seasonal residents as well, would get a copy of it. So we want to continue to do that because we think that's a great way to reach out to our residents, those permanent residents and our seasonal residents. So this is a little bit of a chart that just wanted to do is give you a little bit of an idea of the situation that we're in. And it's obviously not to scale, it's just a bit of a graphic, but if you can look at where we were, okay, in 2016 we have this gap, and our biggest challenge when we came up to our budget at the beginning of the year was, how do we close this gap? If you take this line backwards for 10 or 12 years, we've been marginal tax increases moving forward, but our expenses as a city, our operating expenses and our capital expenses of a city have been growing faster than our tax increases, and obviously by this line you see outpacing them. And this gap has been growing over the past number of years. And what we've been doing is we've been funding that gap with our reserves, our city reserves, and with our debenturing. We're putting borrowing money against our line of credit to fund this gap, to really artificially keep our tax increases at a reasonable level to pass on to our residents. So what's basically happened here, and we'll get into it in a few more slides, is this gap has increased. We haven't been keeping up as we should have been, so we kind of hit a wall. And I like to say to people, it kind of compares to if you're making $50,000 a year and spending $60,000 a year at home. You can get away with it for a little while, but sooner or later it catches up with you, and it caught up to us. And we basically, at the beginning of this year, recognized that we had about an $11 million financial pressure gap that we had to close. So that's where this very large tax increase came from. 8.15% brought us in about $7 million to close this gap. And then what we decided to do, what our council decided, when I say we or me, I mean our council obviously, what we decided to do is we're going to work hard on our end of the business up here to try and close this gap from an operational perspective. So we want to take the top off of this. If we don't change anything as a municipality moving forward, you can see this line is going to continue to increase. And in order for us to keep up to it, we're just going to create another gap. So what we're doing is we are trying to reduce our footprint as a city, is get our expenses down, and our operating expenses as a municipality, bring those down so that we can stop this trend and we can bring it down so that the ultimate goal here moving forward, and again, this is not to scale, would be marginal tax increases, and this line coming down, and obviously the sooner the better, meeting with this line, and then moving forward together where we can have marginal tax increases, but living within our means. And that's not what we've been doing. We've been funding those tax increases through, like I say, through using our reserves, and I'll show you that in the next slide. So it's just a little bit of a picture on the situation we were in. 14 years of inherited land and buildings and infrastructure. It really is a collection of assets as a city that isn't efficiently serving our municipality 14, 15 years ago. We really had no long-term plan on how we were going to address it, and we have been funding the gap through the reserves and debt. We've had no substantial enhancements to service anywhere in the city in the last little while. Our growth as a city has flatlined, and that gap was increasing. So we needed to stop that bleeding, I guess you could call it, and change the way we're doing business, and that's what our council chose to do with this with this very difficult tax increase here, close the gap, work hard up here, and ultimately our goal now is we need to get these two lines to meet, and then we move forward. We're in a much better position moving forward. So I'll go on to the next one here, and I'll show you a couple of, just in case you think I'm making it up. Over the last 8 years, when I say we've been funding it through our reserves, over the last 8 years, since 2008, the municipality has spent $34 million of our reserves just to balance the budget and maintain this footprint that we've inherited as a city. Our 2016 reserves right now sit at about $17 million. We have spent $34 million in the last 8 years to balance that. Most of that $17 million that we have right now is committed for future projects coming forward. We have about $6 million of that that's available to the municipality, and out of that, we have insurance, planning, doctor recruitment, WSIB. There's some things that have to come out of that. Totally uncommitted reserves that we have for a city in case of an emergency is about $1.7 million. For a municipality this size, that's totally unacceptable. It's a 10%, should be a 10% rule. 10% of your budget should be put aside for reserves in case of an emergency. Our budget is $200 million. We should have an uncommitted reserve as a municipality of about $20 million. So this trend needs to reverse, and we need to start by getting our house in order, building these reserves back up so that if something happens, it doesn't take a whole lot of flooding in the Burnt River area, as you're aware of, to create, a situation where we're going to need to tap into some of these reserves. So totally unacceptable situation that has to change. So we need to put some money away for a rainy day, there's no doubt about it. So what I want to do here is just go through I want to show you where some of your tax dollars go. I think it's important, it's your money. Total city revenue we bring in is about $205 million. Out of that, 60% of that comes from taxes. So total taxes bring in about $124 million. Out of that $124 million, about $27 million of that goes straight to the province for the education tax for our schools. So we bring in through taxation that we are able to fund our municipality with just about $97 million. Now the difference between this amount here, the 123 and the 204, is made up of grants. We get grants from different levels of government to fund different operations. A lot of these grants are beyond our control. Some of them are very consistent, and in the past, the province, everybody's been pretty good at keeping that consistency, but there's no guarantees moving forward that that'll remain. So we have to make sure that we're doing a good job on our end, obviously. User fees brings in about another $19 million. User fees are rental of our facilities, our arenas, checking out books at the library, just anything that the city has that we charge a fee for. That's what generates about $19 million in user fees. And this other balance, about $8.5 million, comes from investment income, transfers from other municipalities. We have a housing partnership deal with Halliburton, so we look after their social housing for them, and then they transfer money to our municipality to help pay for it. So that's what municipal transfers is. Penalties and interest on taxes, so if you don't pay your taxes on time. So we don't want everybody to pay their taxes on time because we need that money in penalty and interest. So that's a joke, sorry. Infrastructure. Not a very good one, right? So investment income is an interesting one. We generate a pretty good dollar as a municipality when we collect your tax dollars. Obviously, it comes in at tax time in certain installments, and we don't obviously need to spend it all at the same time that it comes in. So what we do is we take some of that revenue that we don't need right away, and we put it into short-term investments. And we've got some great financial people at the city who have been turning around some pretty good investments, short-term investments with that money until we need it to fund our operations as a city. So we've been able to generate some substantial extra revenue as a city just by being able to do that. So that's kind of what rounds out a little bit about where the majority, and I just want to go through now some of the different departments that uses up some of that tax dollar. So we'll flip over here, and this is our emergency services. So there, out of your tax levy, about $27.5 million goes to emergency services, about 22%. That total budget is about $34 million, and the difference is funded. Our paramedic service is a 50-50 funding from the province, so their total budget for our ambulance service is about $8.8 million. The province pays half of that. It's a provincial service in partnership with the municipalities, but the reason that is it's seamless. If you call an ambulance from here and it comes from the next area over, the next region over, the closest ambulance will be dispatched to you no matter where it is in the province. So we have a certain contingent of ambulances within our municipality, but if there's an emergency call somewhere and they have to go to Peterborough or to another area, then other ambulances would flow from Halliburton or different regions to cover it. So that's kind of our partnership agreement with the province. They fund half of that. A couple things I want to touch on here, one being the OPP was a huge part of your tax increase this year, about $2.5 million went onto the tax bill as an increase for the OPP. They came up with a new billing model, the OPP did 2 years ago, and what happened was we had municipalities in the provinces, some were paying $50 a year for OPP services, and others were paying about $1,000 a year for OPP services, so it wasn't fair. So what they did was they came up with a new billing model, a new structure, and it is a fair system across the entire province, but it meant some had to come up, some went down. We had to come up a little bit, so over the last 2 years, we got increases of about $1.2 million in our OPP portion of policing, and the first year in 2015, we funded it out of our OPP reserve, so we wouldn't have to put it on the tax increase. And guess what? Now the reserve is gone, so this year we had that 1.2 million we had to fund. This year's increase of 1.2 million we had to fund, so you got on your tax bill a $2.4 million increase strictly with OPP at all on there. And it is a change in the billing model, and I want to stress it's not extra money coming into the OPP. They're keeping their revenues the same. It's just changing the way they allocate it to different municipalities. The good news is, those are the two increases that bring us up to the level where we should be at with the OPP. So from here on in, it should just be cost of living increases and calls per service moving forward. So we shouldn't have any more large increases. I know most of you are probably aware, but I'll mention the City of Kawartha Lakes Police is the Lindsay and Ops police force. There's 2 police forces in the city. You do not pay for both police forces. The OPP is area rated to all the areas outside of Lindsay and Ops, and the City of Kawartha Lakes Police, $7.6 million. Only the people in Lindsay and Ops pay for that police service. So a lot of people say if you had one police service, you would save a lot of money. It's not necessarily true. There's a little bit of overlap in administration, but nobody's paying for both police forces. You're paying for one or the other. If next year the City of Kawartha Lakes Police bill goes up by $2.5 million, Lindsay and Ops residents would have to have that on their taxes. You would not see that increase in the OPP. So it kind of works one or the other. The only other thing I want to mention here real quick is the fire rescue service. Been in the news a little bit lately. They've made some good changes over the last couple of years, and last year, coming into this year's budget, their budget is down $1 million from last year. So they've been able to change some ways they deliver their service and find some good efficiencies in the fire service. So they're doing a good job there at helping us out. So, okay. So this is another big one, which is our roads, waste, and transit, our operating portion of our budget. Transit, even though transit is a part of that, transit again is only available in Lindsay, and it is area rated to the Lindsay residents, so nobody outside of Lindsay who doesn't get transit pays for transit, only those residents that pay for it use it. The total program cost for this budget, this is what comes out of your taxes, this portion, 20%, but the total budget's about $36 million that goes into our operations. The rest of it is funded from user fees and our reserves. This is a portion of the budget that we need to increase. We need to get more money out so we can look after our roads a little bit better operational-wise. Operating, ditching, grading, brushing, snow removal, engineering, that's all part of our operations for clearing our roads. So that's a big portion of our budget. So the next one is the capital portion of our budget, which is $10.7 million, about 9% of your taxes go toward that. Their total program cost is about $30 million in budget. The rest is used through debenture, reserves, and grants. Obviously, for some of our capital programs, when you're talking a bridge, for instance, we're replacing a bridge costs $5 million. It doesn't make sense for us to put the $5 million on the tax levy. There are certain things that it makes very good sense to debenture. If it's going to last for 30 years, we should debenture it over 20 years and let the people that are using it over the next 20 years pay for it. So it's a good way of using, having that debt available. If it's used wisely, it makes sense in some of our capital programs. So a couple things I just want to touch on here: road reconstruction, resurfacing, bridge repairs, building replacement projects, roofs, HVAC systems, electrical systems, paving, depot improvements. All our fleet purchases are included in this: replacement snowplows, pickup trucks, fire trucks, ambulances, etc. Out of the tax increase this year, $3 million extra dollars went into the capital portion of our program this year from the tax increase. And that is, again, another area that our capital, $10.7 million, is sitting at about what it was about 8 or 9 years ago. We have not increased that capital expenditure on our facilities and stuff. So that's where we're starting to feel that pain now, where roofs are needing replaced because we haven't been putting enough money into a lot of our facilities and a lot of our roads. And you don't have to drive too far to know that we can do a better job on some of our roads. So a couple things I just want to touch on. Last year in 2015, we invested $8.1 million to resurface about 67 kilometers of road. Sounds like a lot, but it's not. 1 kilometer of road, just for information, costs about $218,000 to put asphalt on. 1 kilometer of road costs about $106,000 if we put tar and chip on it. And 1 kilometer of road, if we just put gravel on it, is about $15,000. So City of Kawartha Lakes has over 2,700 kilometers of road. So just gives you a bit of an idea of the challenges ahead of us when it snows and we have to clear the roads. I mean, that's farther than driving from here to Florida. And that's, it's a major event for us to get out. And, when some people say my road hasn't been cleared yet, well, they're out there, they're doing the best they can, but it's a huge municipality that we're trying to get our head around. So that's just to give you a little bit of idea of the capital program for where your taxes go. So the next one is Human Services, which used to be Social Services. We've changed it. It's about $10.5 million of your tax portion goes into that budget. Their total budget is about $51 million, so a huge portion of that budget area is funded by the province. We completed some new affordable housing units last year, about 29 of them, and we've got approval on another phase where we're trading in or leveraging 25 old units against some provincial funding to demolish those and develop 34 new housing units. So we've got some good programs in the work, and that includes your housing help, social services, and Victoria Manor down in the Lindsay area. So your community services is the other one up here, about the same amount, $10.4 million. Their total budget is $15 million, with the rest being funded from the user fees I spoke about earlier. And this is really just, it says it right here what it is. It's all our service centers, it's our parks, our recreation and culture, cemeteries, libraries, building and property maintenance is what goes into funding our, what has to be looked after through our community services budget. So lots of stuff to look after there. So I want to talk a little bit about our debt. City's debt, there's some rumors out there that we're hundreds of $millions in debt, which is simply not the case. We have a debt, the tax levy portion of our debt right now, principal and interest payment is almost $4.5 million. We have about $23 million in debt against our tax levy, so that's against all taxpayers in the City of Kawartha Lakes. We're about $42 million in debt against all our water and wastewater users. So if you're on a water system, there's a $42 million debt on that. We have about 12,500 water and wastewater users in the municipality. This is an area of the city that is not sustainable for us, and we know that. We do not have enough users. We have 21 water systems and 6 wastewater systems in the city, and we do not have enough people here to help fund it. So we've got the province, we're working with the province and the federal government to try to come up with some programs and some extra funding to take that pressure off, but that's why that debt's so high there. So we've got total debt in the city of about $74 million with those two combined, but I want to stress that $40 million portion is only on the water and wastewater portion. It's not on the general tax levy. So if you're on a well or a septic tank, that's not part of, you're not part of that. So a lot of people say we're, debt-wise, we're about $72 million in debt. We're not upside down by any means from a municipality. At the current interest rates, our debt capacity sits at about $180 million. We can borrow up to $180 million. We're sitting at about $72 million right now. So we're certainly not upside down by any means, but we don't want to keep funding our operational budget on our debt and get ourselves to that point where our credit card's maxed out. I mean, it's pretty common sense. I mean, it's good debt, it's bad debt. A mortgage on a house is good debt. Running up your credit card is bad debt. We want to make sure we have that room in our debt to start, investing in our communities and some assets so that we can lower our footprint moving forward. So we don't want to, we don't want to use it all, obviously, on bad debt. Our total debt repayment, just for information, on those two, on a total of $72 million, is about $10.6 million a year that we pay $7.8 million of that in principal, and about $2.8 million of that in interest is what we pay every year on our debt. So we're there. We're not upside down, but we certainly don't want to get to that point, and that's why you're hearing some of the stories you're hearing these days. So the administration portion of the city involves the mayor and council, CAO's office, clerk's office, legal services, strategy management office, and corporate services. Out of the tax levy, about $3.3 million is funded out about 3%. The total budget for that area is about $19.5 million, with the rest coming from provincial grants and some of our investment income that I showed you earlier, total there about $16 million. A couple things our city's done that we're working on that we've had some great success with in the last year was negotiating with all our unions. For the first time in a long time, we've got long-term agreements with all of our unions, so we have a very stable workforce moving forward. Our unions came to the table. We took a bit of a different approach, a little more amicable. They came forward knowing what the city was up against and what we were trying to do, and it was a very respectful conversation with many of our different unions, and we were able to come to some very reasonable agreements and sort of give us that stability moving forward from a workforce. So I just wanted to say that we really appreciate that our unions were willing to work with us as residents and taxpayers here where we needed to go. Not just our unions, but our non-union staff as well came forward with some very reasonable requests, and we were able to enter into lots of agreements. So we've got a good stable workforce moving forward over the next 3 or 4 years. So this slide I want to spend a few minutes on and just talk to you a little bit about. Don't throw anything at me, it's just a projection, okay? So what we're trying to show you here is that this is your tax increase this year. So there's a couple areas I want to touch on, one being the growth. Okay, so traditionally if you go back, this is moving forward from 2016 to 2021, about 1%. For the last 10 years, our growth has sort of stagnated about 1%, fairly flat, in the whole city of Kawartha Lakes. We've been investing fairly heavily in the growth area of our city so that we can stimulate some growth. This is what will take pressure off the bottom portion of this tax increase. So if next year's projection, if we don't change anything as a city and we just keep doing business the way we've been doing it all along and nothing changes with what we know today, these are some of the increases we're going to be looking at moving forward to 2021. Now before you get really mad at me, I think these are very unacceptable as well. So this is why we're working so hard to try and reduce that footprint. So if we take a 5.97 projection for next year, and I mean we're not there yet, so it's just a projection, with a 1% growth, goes down to 4.97. So as you can see moving forward, if we can get this growth from 1 to 1.25 to 1.5 to 2, then all of a sudden this goes from 4.33 to 3.33. So that's why we need to invest in the growth to get people to come here to spread that tax base out over the whole municipality. We're doing that. We're starting to see those signs, and I'll touch on it in a minute. The other part of it is the top portion of it here, which is our expenses as a city moving forward to operate our municipality, what we need to bring in revenue moving forward. So if nothing changes, okay? So what our goal is, and what our council is working hard to do, is we want to attack this from both sides. So if we can get our growth to shuffle up to even 2.5% up here, and we can take the top off of this that I explained in a previous slide to sort of get those expenses coming down, then the ultimate goal here is this number starts to go down, this number starts to go up, and ultimately this goal here moving forward, the ultimate goal, and I'm not afraid to say it, is cost of living tax increases moving forward. But not cost of living tax increases moving forward by hiding what we really need in our debt or in our reserves. Cost of living tax increases moving forward because we're now at a point where we can start living within our means as a municipality, and that's the goal we're trying to get to. Not hide it somewhere or put it over here just so you get your tax bills. Oh, this isn't too bad. My taxes only went up 2%. They should have went up 5%. And that's what's got us into this problem, the situation we're in the first place. So that's our ultimate goal moving forward. These are just some projections, based on if nothing changes on what we know. But we're very, very optimistic that these will not be the numbers that we need to move forward with. If they have, we've basically failed as a council to do what it is we need to do here in the municipality. So we need to work on that growth. We've got an aggressive growth strategy, and we are going to see those numbers move up. But we do have to reduce the footprint and increase the growth, target those costs of living. I think this is a really good plan, folks. I think this is a good plan moving forward. It's doable, and if we can make some tough decisions and we can get a handle on our expenses in the top here, I know we can get a handle on this and start maximizing our return on investment here in the city and move forward in a much better situation than we have been in the past. So, all right, thank you. So this is just a very not to scale to touch on the growth strategy as we move forward. So obviously our goal, 2001 to 2016, we've got the 1%. Obviously we're looking to increase that growth as we move up. The province has told us we're targeting about 100,000 permanent residents in the city of Kawartha Lakes within the next 15 years. Those are the province's number that we have to sort of build our growth forecast around. More permanent residents means more jobs, less tax burden on everyone. And you'll see what we're targeting. So we're investing in some of our infrastructure. We are feeling that growth is starting to come. That interest in our community is starting to come. In 2015, we issued 950 new building permits worth about $110 million. That's probably double what we've seen in the past history moving forward. 26 industrial permits, up from 11, and an $11 million increase. And as you're probably aware, in a lot of areas of the city, we've had record-breaking residential sales. The demand for housing is very high, and the asking price and sales are doing quite well. So we're ready for some of this growth to come. We've allocated some different areas. A northwest trunk down in the Lindsay area is ready for 6,000 new homes and about 1.5 million square feet of retail and commercial space, including a Walmart. I know you're going to ask that later, so I'm telling you now. I'm very confident that they're coming, okay? But there is no signed agreement yet, so there's my... So to improve, the other part of this, to improve our approvals processes, we've created a task force, a planning approvals task force. Is comprised of members of our council, the development and the real estate community. And the goal there is to create a more streamlined approach to our planning processes. We haven't always been the most friendly city to deal with when somebody wants to come here from a development perspective. So we want to streamline those processes, get those local developers to work faster, and get that growth coming to the city to take that bottom pressure off our existing residents. Council has endorsed our secondary plans for Lindsay, Omemee, Fenland Falls, Bobcaygeon, and Woodville. So that's where we're allocating growth in some of those urban areas. That's where the demand is. I'm not saying we're not going to grow in other areas, but that's where some of the demand is right now. Our DC charges, which is development charges, when you build a residential home or a developer comes in, we charge a development charge to that developer, and it's to it's to pay for the infrastructure. The taxpayer should not be paying for the infrastructure for growth. Growth should be funded by development charges from new developers that are building in our community. That has not always been the case. Our development charges have traditionally been very low in the city of Kawartha Lakes, about $6,000 on a fully serviced lot. And the strategy, I guess, for the last 10 or 12 years was let's keep them low. We'll encourage growth. People will want to build here. As you can see by the 1% line over the last 12 years, it didn't work. So we didn't have any infrastructure in the ground. We weren't generating the revenue to put that infrastructure in the ground. And so council passed a bylaw last year, a couple of years ago, to increase our development charges to about $18,000, which is what they should be to cover the growth so that the taxpayer isn't subsidizing that growth. And by putting it up to $18,000, we are now competitive with a lot of the municipalities around us. We are not outpricing it by any means. A lot of people said that would hurt our growth as a municipality by increasing it that much. Just to give you a little, DC's last year till June before the increase, we brought in about $260,000. In 2015 up till June. This year up till June, we brought in over $800,000 in development charges. So that growth strategy is working. We're starting to see it hasn't hurt the demand. We're putting the infrastructure in the ground. We're accommodating the growth. And I think it's a good plan as we move forward to get that growth to help balance what we already have here. So we're also working on a new economic development strategy so that we can ensure that we're bringing tourists to our area to spend money, fall in love with Kawartha Lakes. The strategy will build opportunities for businesses to continue to thrive, to create new jobs. We have some new people in our economic development department, and we've got some very high expectations. They're going to come forward with some real fresh, some new ideas. So we're pretty excited there. We're also got a new communications, advertising, and marketing strategy that's being worked on to ensure that we capitalize on some of the potential that we have right here in the city, and we're communicating properly with our residents. So really, all of this will contribute to a healthier economy. More services that we value, and more people to help pay for it. And the end result is a more affordable community to live in. And hopefully no more of these 8.15% tax increases. So that's our ultimate, ours and yours, I'm sure, ultimate goal moving forward. So, okay, so next one, this is our core service review. I want to touch on a few things there. This button is on our website. On the top left-hand corner of our website, there's a core service review button, and our city's been engaged in this for the last 18 months. If you click on that, all the reports categorized, arenas, community halls, libraries, are all sort of categorized. You can click on any one of those. All the reports that have been received by council that I've seen to date are up on the website, so if you're interested in any specific area, you can follow along with that. We are very similar to other municipalities undergoing reviews, but ours by far is the largest in the province for a core service review perspective. I meet with other mayors down in Eastern Ontario in a different caucus, mayors and wardens down there, and we talk, and they're doing a core service review, and they have 3 libraries, and they wonder if they can get by with 2, or they have 2 arenas and wonder if they can get by with 1. And when they say, "What are you guys doing?" It's, "Well, we're doing a review on everything." 49 different areas of our city that we're actually looking at as part of a core service review. So it's a huge undertaking. I know some people are not as patient as they should be, and we're saying, just give us a chance to work through it. It's a lot of pressure on our staff and our council. It's a lot of things that need to change, a lot of things, and we want to make sure that we've got the right information and the proper information in front of us so that we can make good decisions moving forward, and we're not pulling the trigger on something that 5 years from now we say, "Oops, we shouldn't have done that." So we just want to make sure we have all that information. So if it's taking a little longer than we hoped it would, but it was a 2-year process when we set out. We're about 18 months into it, so by the end of this year, we're looking to have some good things in place. So over the next couple of years, we can start working away and stopping that decline and start working on the growth end of it. So we're also, one of the things that we're doing in addition to the core review, we are for the first time planning a 5 and 10-year budget and asset management plan. Our municipality's never had a long-term budget plan. We've just sort of gone year by year by year. So by planning a 5 and 10-year operating and capital plan, we can sort of forecast where we're going to be when people want to come to our community. They can look at our growth, where we're looking to go, set some forecasts, and it's just a much better process moving forward if we have some long-term goals rather than year by year. So as we're going to touch on in a minute, there's some big decisions just around the corner. Some of the reviews are in. You've had a chance, if you're interested, to read some of them online. And now council's going to be in a position fairly soon where we have to start making some decisions. So, thank you. Core service review. So, the objectives of our review was to review the services the city should deliver, define our service levels, and maximize our resources to efficiently deliver them. We need to right-size our city budgets. We need to maintain an equitable, affordable, and sustainable citywide service delivery model. And again, our long-term growth, 107,000 population by 2041. We need to make sure we can accommodate that growth, and we're off to a good start. We're not looking to simply cut costs, increase taxes, and close buildings. And I hear that from people. All you're doing is closing things, and you're raising our taxes. That's not the case. We're looking to change the way we deliver our services, find a more efficient way to deliver them as a city, reduce our footprint. We've inherited a huge footprint as a municipality, and it's become very painfully obvious that it's not a footprint that we can continue to afford. So we're trying to make the right decisions without doing away with services, just change the way we deliver them so that we still have these core services available to our residents, just in a more affordable and obviously convenient way moving forward. So that's what we hope to accomplish. So, what we're facing as a city, I've touched on a few of these earlier. This is really just for information. We have a huge boundary, over 3,000 square kilometers, half the size of Prince Edward Island. It includes 2,700 lane kilometers of roads, so that means if you go both ways, it's 5,400 kilometers, way further than from here to Miami. 8 single pad arenas, 1 twin pad, and 1 natural ice we have up in Norland. We have 18 standalone community halls. When we say standalone, this is a standalone community hall. We have other community halls that are in with arenas or other facilities, so they're not considered standalone. We have 6 service centers in the city. We have 21 fire stations and 5 paramedic stations, 16 library branches, 11 roads depots, 135 parks, 55 sports fields, and 3 swimming pools. It is a huge footprint. We have to maintain all this. We have to repair this. We have to service this and operate each year, and we simply aren't doing it as well as we should be doing it. That's why we're looking to get you some information on why we have to make some changes. how can we consolidate, improve, relocate, or shift some of the assets to make it better for everybody. We have to make this an affordable situation moving forward. Everybody seems to understand that. Everybody seems okay with that. Just a little bit of a, I had a lady down in one of the other meetings I was at. It was quite funny. She says, I can't believe we have 55 sports fields. And I says, well, we do. She goes, well, why don't you close some of them? And I says, well, you know, we're going to have a look at that. And I says, but don't close the one here, right? She goes, no, don't close this one, you know, but close them somewhere else. So, but then when I go to these different communities, that becomes the argument, right? I understand what you have to do. It's very hard to do. Just don't do it here. And then you go to the next community and they say, well, go do it over there. Well, I just went over there. They told me to do it over here. So that becomes a bit of a challenge from a council. How do we balance that with the community interest? Because we're certainly not looking to hurt communities. We're not looking to destroy communities. We're just trying to find that balance to deliver our core services to the municipality and our residents, but do it in an affordable way, because it can't continue the way it's going. That is not negotiable. We have to find a better way to do this. So this is just a little bit of a map showing you what the city owns. Just for information, we have 757 parcels of land, including our parks, totaling over 58 square kilometers, and it just gives you an idea. Seems to be a lot up here in the Kinman area. There seems to be, it's pretty spread out over the whole municipality, and we're also maintaining about 200 buildings and structures. So just gives you a little bit of an idea of this enormous footprint of lands and buildings. And for 15 years, we've limped along, maintaining a lot of our old buildings, patching infrastructure, trying to keep the lights on, keep the doors open and the lights on, fixing a roof when we have to. We really haven't been enhancing services to any of our residents at all over the last 15 years. We only fix roads when they absolutely need it, fall apart. You know, we fill potholes, we come back 2 weeks later, we fill them again, and we're not really ever in a position where we can start to do better and start enhancing some of these facilities. So this is the goal that we're trying to accomplish. And when people say all you're trying to do is close buildings, they are 100% wrong. We're trying to take what we can do in an affordable way. We need to do better with those facilities. And if we're going to have, if we have two community halls and they're 5 minutes apart and they're both underutilized, does it not make more sense to close one of those halls, sell it off, get the tax revenue coming in, and invest in the other hall in the community so that we can make it a better hall, more functionable for people, but reducing that footprint at the same time? And you know, is it a little less convenient in certain areas of the city? Of course it is. But in the long run, what it does is it gives us a sustainable model moving forward that we can all afford, and we know we can do a better job with some of these services. So that's what we're trying to do. We have to look at a better solution to ensure we have the right amount of arenas, libraries, service centers, fleet, and staff to service our entire community. So next, okay, we're getting through it. Core service review, our next steps. So this is a little bit I want to touch on here. So most of our 49 reports have been completed. There's a couple things the city's done in the meantime to achieve some savings. Through some of our staff reductions, we've reduced about 12 staff over 2015 through attrition. And what we're doing is we're moving some people around. We have had areas in our city where we're overstaffed. We've had areas in our city where we're understaffed and we're not servicing residents properly. So we're shifting some bodies around through attrition. We're reducing wherever we can. And that, and negotiating our new benefit package for our employees, we were able to come up with about a $1.8 million savings from a citywide perspective on our own. We came up last year with a new insurance provider. We put out a tender for our city's insurance, and we were able to save $200,000 on our premiums last year. So, and we're just in the process of beginning to try to sell over $1 million of surplus city property. If you remember the map previous with all the purple on it, we have a lot of property in the city, and a lot of that property we don't use. We just cut the grass. It's a vacant lot in between a residential area for whatever reason. We have it all over the municipality. We know we can sell over $1 million of surplus property to take some of that pressure off the tax levy. We're not doing a very good job right now getting it to market. So there is a bit of a process because it's municipal. It's not just sticking a real estate sign on it and putting it up for sale. But this is an area that we need to do a better job on, getting that property that we don't need to market faster so that we can use that money and invest it in other areas of our city to do a better job. So that and our 5 and 10 year budget strategy will allow us to achieve our objectives. Through an energy conservation program at the city, we've saved from last year, or 2014 to 2015, over $160,000 on our hydro bill. That sounds like a lot, but our hydro bills at the city total about $5.5 million. So $160,000 is a lot, but we know we can also do better through further efficiencies there. So we think we can save a fair bit of money on our hydro if we just make some better decisions on what we're doing. So some of our decisions coming to council between now and the end of year, arenas. On December 8th of 2015, there was a council resolution that passed to reduce our ice pads from 10 to 8 by consolidating 6 single pads into 2 twin pads. There's a stakeholder and a public meeting was held on April 25th and 26th, and that report, including implementation recommendations, was brought forward on June 21st and referred through some more public process to the council meeting on Tuesday. That report will be coming forward for a possible decision. Service centers, there was a presentation outlining service centers to council on July 8th of 2015. That report, including implementation recommendations, was brought forward again on June 21st and referred to Tuesday's council meeting as well. So we're reviewing our customer service model, our standard. Our service centers are under review, and we're looking at, can we provide similar service with less locations, or is there a way to better utilize our staff? And one of the examples we're looking at doesn't have an effect in this area, but one of the areas we're looking at, we have some service centers where we have a service center and a library. So we have a librarian and a service center person. There's in some situations they're not busy enough for the 2 people, so we feel by maybe expanding our library and having a better library and training our library staff to offer 80% of those service center options, that we can do that with a single body and have a better library to offer to our residents. So even though you might read that we're closing a service center, we're not necessarily closing the building and doing away with those services. We just know we can offer these services in a more efficient way. So that's one of the models that we're exploring a little bit moving forward. That report comes to council on Tuesday. Libraries, on December of 2015, the library board presented a strategic plan which included steps to reduce the current model of 18 libraries to 14. City staff have been working with our library board through some meetings to match it up with some of the core services that the city's trying to accomplish. Obviously, the library board is a separate entity that has their own authority to run the library portion through the city's budget, but obviously their facilities are tied into some of the municipality's buildings, so we need to obviously be on the same page as we're moving forward as they attempt to restructure their model as well. Council, so we received an update on June 21st, and on Tuesday there's another report coming to council, but again, it's just really for information because the library board has the authority to make these decisions as long as it's within the budget that council gives them. On fire stations, 2015 in November, council resolved to reduce the current stations from 21 to 19 in the initial phase. There was a peer review was done to make sure we had good information we were making decisions on. That came forward on June 21st of this year and was received by council and kind of supported the original information that was brought forward. Community halls, in December 8th of 2015, there was a council resolution to reduce standalone community halls from 18 to 12 by closing 2 per year in 2016, 2017, and 2018. And that report, including implementation and recommendations, will be brought forward in the 3rd quarter of this year, so it won't be coming until the fall. Parks and sports fields, which you were asking about earlier, we're reviewing those operations, and that report with some recommendations will be coming forward in the 4th quarter of this year. So our goal is to have all these core service review and decisions completed by the end of the year, and we're on track pretty good to get there. So how am I doing on timing? Pretty good. So our strategic plan was passed by the city in January of this year. It's a good plan, and it just sort of all our decisions and all our goals and all our reports we get from our staff, we're trying to tie into our strategic plan as we move forward. I'm going to touch on it really briefly. Vibrant and growing economy. We've touched a little bit on how we're investing in growth in many different ways. The exceptional quality of life. We have to ensure we have the amenities, schools, jobs, recreational opportunities to allow people of all ages to enjoy life here. And obviously a healthy environment. It kind of goes without saying that we need to look after our environment. If we want to have a high standard of living, we depend on our water and our agricultural land especially. The city of Kawartha Lakes has over 250 lakes and rivers within its boundaries. So obviously environment is a huge portion of what it is we're trying to, what we're trying to do when we talk about quality of life. I'm just gonna wrap up here on my core service part. You just want to go to the next one. So if you want to send us an email, if you have concerns about the direction we're going, if you have some other ideas, we'd love to hear from you. No, seriously, if you want to write core service review at citykawarthalakes.on.ca, that comes directly to me, and I will send it to agenda items so that all of council gets a copy of that, and any of these decisions that are made, if you have some input on those, we would like to hear from you. We're receiving quite a bit of information from people, different ideas about how we can do it. If it comes to that, I will acknowledge that I've received it, and I will forward it to our clerk's office so that all of council gets a copy of it as we move forward with some of these decisions. In summary, I just want to say briefly that 8.15% tax increase hurts. It hurts a lot. And we recognize that as a council. We recognize that that puts a tremendous burden on a lot of our residents. A lot of our residents with fixed incomes, that's a lot of money, and we know that. And I want to assure you that it's not a decision that this council took lightly. And we had a good discussion about it moving forward. I'm sure you don't like it anymore now, but hopefully at least you explain where we were and why we felt it was the right decision. I do feel it was the right decision. It was necessary at the time. We do have a plan moving forward that hopefully that never has to happen again. If we can make some good decisions moving forward, I think this is a good plan. There'll be some good changes, and I think there'll be some great results coming out of it if we can continue to move forward in that direction. I touched on it earlier, but one of the things I hear a lot about is people say you're closing buildings, and and kind of gets my back up a little bit, because that's not what we're doing. And this is a bit of an exciting time in our municipality, and you know what, we're here, and I wanted to come out in the community and sort of talk to you and get your feedback on where we're going, because I think we now have an opportunity to shape our municipality for the next 15 or 20 years, whether it's the ward boundary and structuring our government, our municipal government, as we move forward with our number of councillors, our borders, and I'll touch on that in a little bit, or whether it's our facilities and how we move forward. We amalgamated 15 years ago. We were forced into this amalgamation. We've been whining about it ever since, but it's now we have an opportunity to change the way we do business for the next 15 years. So I don't look at it like the big negative that some people look at. I look at it like we have an opportunity here to, things need to change. The world changes, we need to change with it, and I think, your council deserves a lot of credit for tackling this head on and not just pushing it off to somebody else's problem. We realize we have a problem, we realize we have to do something about it, and we're trying to make some good decisions as we move forward. I know you won't agree with them all, and I respect that, but I think at the same time we're doing the best we can with the best information we have as we move forward as a municipality. So I just wanted to touch on that. I'll take a little bit if there's any questions. If anybody wants any clarification on anything to do with the core review or the direction.